Welcome back, everyone, to the League of Legends European Championship, where I'm joined by Andrew Vedius Day and Daniel Drakos. How are you guys doing? Day 2, Game 4. How many surprises have we seen so far?
This day has been so one-sided.
Oh, yeah.
I feel like it's been blitz. We are literally like, hey,
Schalke, crush.
We should start our own speedrun charity event. I feel like with the way games are going right now.
Looks like it. Let's see what this one is. It's Splyce versus Origen, so it has the potential of being not as one-sided. I hope so, at least, as these are two teams that are in the middle of the pack, vying to get higher up and break into a top 4. Possibly. Now, Origen is, of course, a team that we have high expectations for a lot because of the history they have in EU LCS, but the team that's here now is not that team anymore, obviously. It's completely different, and you have a bit of a bone to pick with them after yesterday's game versus Misfits.
Yeah, so the thing is, Origen, I had a lot of faith in you coming into the split. Deficio really hyped you up, and I even predicted you to win against Misfits yesterday, and you lost, so thank you very much for that. But the problem I have is that I was impressed with the draft. I heard that Andre was ecstatic with how the draft all panned out, and everything looked great, but the execution was terrible. It was just awful. Like, a bot lane dying to a Nunu snowball, even when you had heal and grey health, you hate to see it. Alfari dying 1v1, just, it's awful. I was so disappointed with how they played that I had to say yikes afterwards. That's what I was saying. I said yikes, Daniel Drakos.
Yeah, it felt less like OG and more like XD, if we're honest.
Or Fnatic right now.
Oh, God.
No, I don't want to kick him while they're down.
No, I mean, I've done it like 3 times today. I don't know why I'm cringing at you. Like, it's hard
Yeah,
not.
definitely.
You relish these opportunities because so rarely do you get to kick.
Yeah, and also it's a bit unfair because we're talking about Origen, so a bit out of place there. But I get your sentiment because at Origen, we're also looking at, they don't have to beat and smash Misfits, right?
No.
We've heard from both Pekka and from Deficio that, you know, it's not about running before they can walk in this instance. They are developing, they are working with their players, some of them quite new also to the professional scene and this and that, together with their veterans. But you do want to see them put up a fight.
It's just, I guess maybe my expectations were too high, but based on what I saw in week 1...
And we've heard rumors of scrims. I think that's why we're all being a bit...
I mean, that's in part of it, but it's also just, you look at how they played last week, and I felt like that they come in with such clear plans about how to deal with what the enemy is bringing. They knew probably better than anyone what Misfits would try to do, and then when they got on stage, the execution just, it fell apart. Individuals were just crumbling across the board, and I was just very disappointed because I built up this
They can do more.
I really think they can do more. And the fact that they've beaten Fnatic near the bottom end, they've now lost quite convincingly to Misfits and G2 at the top end, and now brings the question in, where actually do they fall in the league? How good actually is this team?
And that is why this game specifically is so important, because if this OG has the potential to break into playoffs, maybe even into top 4, a Splyce game is one they have to win. So now let's talk about Splyce, because they've been doing pretty good so far. Xerxes and Vizicachi being back together as a duo have made things happen for this team in conjunction with their new mid laner Humanoid, and it feels like Splyce is a fresh new Splyce.
And honestly, the top side of the map being so strong for Splyce right now is just such a boon. Xerxes being put on champions like Karthus, where he can influence lanes when he's paired with the CC in his lanes, actually look really good. Getting these early ganks with Karthus that I don't think any other players would think of, but this is the kind of innovation we expect from him. Paired with Vizicachi, I talked to them yesterday, the synergy is not gone. The synergy is continuing to grow from their days on UOL, and they look so succinct as a duo.
And I've just been impressed with the growth that Splyce is making, because yesterday I feel like we talked a little bit about how they have this like step-by-step process with the improvements in the coaching staff that they made in 2018. I made the statement at the beginning of the split, they turned good players into great ones, and I wanted to see them elevate, like accelerate this pace of growth, and I feel like that we're actually seeing that acceleration from them already.
Such an important game, 2 teams fighting to make it to the top of the table, and only one thing is sure, someone is getting hurt. Luckily, we have a medic on standby.
Thank you very much, Shox, and good evening, everyone. I'm Aaron Medic Chamberlain, joined by Indiana Foskio in black. And what a game it is likely to be. Both teams still a lot to prove here. Origen especially, after losing to Misfits in G2 and only beating Fnatic.
And it felt like we're kind of approaching this game, at least through my lens, from the same perspective of execution. You know, Vedius, sorry guys.
Who is this Medius that you speak of?
A very attractive man. Vedius talked about it on the analyst test, the execution of Origen, the fact that Alfari was dying solo in lane, that Miffy was getting caught out. you saw the blueprint there, but they weren't able to follow it. Which, meanwhile, when Splyce joined us on the analyst desk with Coach Duke and Kabe, they talked about kind of the mis-execution of being a bit more decisive in their team fight. So for this game, I actually think it's really important not only to kind of define that line about who truly is, in that middle of the pack, reaching up into the top echelons of the league, but also then looking for cleaning up that execution and growing as a team.
I think that's what we've seen from all the teams throughout the last couple of weeks. A couple of missteps in week 1. Now they're starting to show us exactly where they fall in the pack. Are you a podium placer? Are you a middle of the pack? Or are you not even making it to playoffs? We'll have to wait and see for both of these teams. Splyce on the blue side will ban out the Swain, the Akali, and the Lucian. Cassiopeia, Karthus, the 2 bans already for Origin.
And it feels like Aurelia is kind of the last one that's really hanging around, as well as the Aatrox and the Urgot. So one of these champions will be given away to Splyce. It's just a matter of pick your poison.
But they've already got rid of that because Karthus is out. Cassiopeia's out. That joke would have worked a lot better if I actually said it correctly. Aatrox is the final ban. The Aurelia still on the cards here. Urgot as well for Splyce if they want to lock that in first.
Usually we've seen a lot of teams prioritize the Urgot. Still works on that flex pick. Most of the time we see it in the top lane, but it just feels kind of like the safer pick right now. Although Odo has been showing a lot of success by taking the Kennen into it later on.
Odo played incredibly well on that Kennen earlier today as well, of course, against Fnatic. Maybe we'll see Alphari pick the Kennen. Haven't seen him play it yet this split, but he has only had 3 opportunities, so still a wide pool of champions in his arsenal. Other options, we're looking at things like the Aurelia, maybe even going for a Sejuani or an early jungle pick here in the form of the Xin Zhao. Third time we'll see Cold taking that one onto Summoner's Rift.
There's also things like the Rakan still open and available, so already they're saying that Cold is going to go back to the tried and true champion. Early game dueling pressure, but I feel like something that we don't often talk about with Xin Zhao is his ability to force a team fight to go front to back. Because of how he can use his ultimate to kind of reset the playing field, if you will, and set a line of scrimmage, if you put him in tandem with a hard carry like a Kog'Maw, he can make sure that the Kog'Maw gets time to eat through the tank line.
And that's exactly what Origin tried to do against Misfits yesterday. They lost too much in the early game for it to work, but now we see Splyce answering, saying, okay, you get the Aurelia, you get the Xin Zhao, we'll take the Nocturne for the jungle, and we'll get Humanoid this Lissandra.
And so much pick potential and so much ability to attack anyone who oversteps even just the slightest toe on the map with both the Nocturne Paranoia as well as the Lissandra, hiding that glacial path through terrain. So I like the options that Splyce have to attack this map because they are saying that they're a very quick, rotation-heavy, macro-based team.
I'm going to see the Rise out from here as well next up for Origin. Something we saw Nukeduck play a lot last year, but we haven't seen it that much in the LEC yet. Kind of fallen to the wayside in terms of mid lane or even top lane picks.
He has popped up a little bit globally in the LCK and the LPL, usually in the top lane, so looking for those mage matchups. It could be flexed either way. I would actually really like to see it go up into the top side, but we'll see.
I guess it depends on what matchup you're going to get, right? Because you know the Lissandra and the Urgot are locked in, but they are both still flex picks to a degree.
And I guess I should clarify that the reason why I prefer the Aurelia mid is I really like the agency that Aurelia gives teams over the river. She has a lot of skirmish, a lot of dueling potential, a lot of kill pressure, especially at level 6 and after her first back. And so in tandem with the Xin Zhao, I feel like an Aurelia mid gives you so much more control over the early map and which side you want to pivot to, whereas Rise doesn't have that same impact because obviously he doesn't front load his itemization through battle stats. It's, that ramping itemization takes him a little bit longer, more of a utility-based pick.
Always talk about 2-3 items on the Rise before he really comes online. We see support pool being picked out here by Origin. They get rid of the Morgana and the Tahm Kench. Rakan also banned, so that support is quite narrow in terms of where you can go. There's the Vayne as well.
Yeah, and this is the obvious thing, though. In the Morgana and Tahm Kench bans being taken away, you are not playing a passive 2v2 against us. We are going to play kill, and then they throw the cherry on top, which is the Alistar. So Origin saying, okay, it's all about Patrick, it's all about Alphari, it's all about Nukeduck. These are our 3 carries, and we're going to make sure that they have kill pressure in their lanes.
Scarin looking back towards that Braum, something he made his name on last year in spring. Of course, playing over on Roccat. I like that pick for him, gives him a little bit of the ability to protect his AD carry as the team tries to dive on top of him. The question is, which AD carry are we going to see Kabe on? Will it be something incredibly safe like the Ezreal, or maybe even something like the Caitlyn?
You could even go for the Kai'Sa. Usually we've seen the Kai'Sa-Alistar as kind of the big duo. Obviously very easy for Alistar to proc the Kai'Sa ultimate.
Is the Kai'Sa, as you say, very strong in that bottom lane, scales up well as the game progresses as well. So we've got some pick, we've got some scaling on the side of Splyce. Now Origen just want to round out their composition with an AD carry or a bot laner of their own.
I like the fact that you talked again about the pick potential that this composition has from Splyce to eat out on those side lanes. The fact that they have Kai'Sa, Nocturne, Lissandra, it's very easy for them to run a swing or a 1-4 and then have Kai'Sa or Nocturne zip to those side lanes. And what you think's a 1v1 very quickly being a 2v1.
Origen just rounding out their composition. It looks like it's going to be the Ezreal. Doesn't quite give you that full-on aggression in the bottom lane. Has a lot of damage, of course, with the poke, and we've seen Patrick already, hasn't actually played at this split yet, but we've seen how impactful it can be in the hands of someone like Upset or any of our other AD characters.
It means that I want to see Cold actually start his jungle pathing on the top side of the map for 2 reasons. The first reason being that as long as champions are stuck at level 1 in the 2v2 bot side, Ezreal's always going to have the advantage there due to the range and power on his Mystic Shot. And the second reason is the Alistar. If you start on the top side, you have a clear path to the bottom way, and they can actually get a snowball going in this bot lane for Patrick and Miffy by setting up Xin Zhao Alistar ganks early on. So that's where I expect Cold to start, but we'll check in the game to see if that's actually where he ends up.
Well, yesterday they got snowballed on in the bottom lane by Misfits, got absolutely devastated by Maxdor's Nunu jungle today. Hopefully their game plan a little bit more concrete, because I think when Origen came into the split, a lot of people were putting them up as a 3rd, 4th, maybe even a 1st, 2nd place team. You know, we expected the Prodigal Sons to come back to the league with a bang, and so far it's felt a little bit like a whimper.
It's a bit of a snap back to reality. I feel like there was a lot of trust fall to Deficio. You know, he's the genius behind this team. He's assembled a great organization. Everyone feels very confident on Origen, but they really haven't had that statement game that you want to see from them.
Especially when we see statement games coming out left and right from teams like Misfits, even teams like XL against G2, actually showing that the level in the LEC is incredibly high at the moment. But as the players load on into the Rift, let's hand it over to Quickshot, who's with Origen's Andre in the coaches' room.
Thank you very much, Medic. Yes, joined here by Andre after picks and bans. No huge surprises here in terms of the draft, the picks we've been seeing, but the rise. Not something we've seen a lot in Europe. What made you lean towards that direction today?
It's just a champion that synergizes well with Xin Zhao and can fight the 2v2 mid-jungle. And it's also a decent matchup into Lissandra that can also play on side and later on win on side. So that's the reason of the rise pick, yeah.
Taking a look at both of these teams, Splyce and Origen had a lot of good moments to look at over the last 2 weeks, but today is a good power test with Splyce sitting at 2-1, Origen 1-2. What do you need to do to unlock to beat Splyce today?
Just play at our maximum strengths and how we play in scrims. I think that we are a better team than Splyce is, and it's up to us to do our role in order to win that game, or it's also up to us to just be either really nervous and really pressured to win, and that makes us lose the game.
I have to ask a question. Of course, yesterday was a very heavy-handed defeat at the hands of Misfits. What's the mood in the camp like after that loss, coming back today and having to, go back on stage and try to pick up that win?
Yeah, I mean, the team reacted well. I think that it hurted a bit more, or way more, than the G2 win because of the difference of level that both teams have. So, I mean, it's just one thing that we just have to take the lessons of the mistakes that we did and how we ended up handling the game to Misfits and moving on, learning from that mistakes and be better for today's game.
All right, so I have one last question. Taking a look at Origen, taking the rebirth here on the LEC stage. Where does Origen end the split?
Our goal, as was said many times, is to end the split going to playoffs. Obviously, that's our goal now in the second week. We'll see how we develop during the whole split, and so far it's to reach playoffs. Maybe when we reach playoffs, the goals are others, but so far we want to focus on ourselves, improving and making sure that we get to playoffs.
Andre, we've made friends. We know each other very well. Let's take the Origen PR of where does Andre want the team to finish personally?
In spring, it's honestly playoffs. I want to go to Worlds, okay. But it's obviously to playoffs. Also because I know that once we reach playoffs, by the profile of players that we have, we will have several advantages against many teams.
I cannot wait to see that reality come true. Best of luck in the game. We'll speak to you soon. We're going to head back to the caster desk.
Thank you very much, Trevor. Some wise words there you have to feel from Andre. But discussing how much pressure there actually really is on this Origen lineup as well. And I think the weight of expectation on this team, especially against a team that coming into the split they would have expected to be beating, is definitely going to weigh heavy this game.
But I think that's why it's so important if you go back to the blueprint that Origen set out when they were putting this roster together, and it's to flank these very young stars in the likes of, Alfari and Patrick with very established veterans like Miffy, Cold, and Nukeduck. So obviously recognizing that pressure, but then trying to alleviate it through very steady voices through comms, which on the other side, if you talk about very young pressure versus flanking veteran talent, Splyce are pretty much in a very similar makeup. They have Kabe, Xerxes, and Vizichachi, and they're just trying to pull together the recently breakout star in Norskaran, and now the rookie in Humanoid.
And Humanoid, probably one of our 3 rookie mid laners that he had a couple of good games. He's kind of slotted into the Splyce playstyle, but he's never really had a chance to really stand out yet. He's not done an Abaddage sort of level performance on the Lissandra yet, so I'd like to see him step out of his comfort zone a little bit more.
And what I loved is when Duke and Kabe were on the analyst desk just yesterday, they talked about the confidence, even verging on the line of cockiness from Humanoid, and that Kabe felt that that was going to be the distinguishing factor, that Humanoid could step up and be that next great generation of EU mid talent. So I have a lot of respect for that type of mentality. It's very hard to teach players to have the bloodlust, to make them go for the aggressive plays. So many players will get up on the competitive stage and they'll play it too safe. It's a very different environment than playing at home, and so I want to see not just the pink keyboard, but I want to see Humanoid step 2.
That is a pretty cool keyboard.
It's the Razor one.
Yeah, got to give him some credit for cracking that one out on stage. We are just waiting for the second round of pick and ban to rotate through before we get on into the action. Shouldn't be too long at all. We talked a little bit about, Andre talked a little bit about the Rise, and I kind of want to discuss how Origen are going to match into Splyce here, because we said, Splyce have pick potential, they can also play side lanes, they can 1-4 if they want, they kind of have a good team fight as well. They seem to have everything they need to win this game, but Origen are trying to answer.
Yeah, and Rise is one of the old school matchups against Lissandra. If you go all the way back to even like 2016 when Lissandra and Rise were all the rage, it's the ability to push the wave back and forth to match that wave clear, and then to also match the pressure out of the side lanes from both champions, because they are very heavy roamers. I do like the fact that he also mentioned the power that it works with in Xin Zhao, the ability to root anyone, especially when Xin Zhao has a displacement himself, the triple into the knockup. So you root him, Xin Zhao flies in, you displace them again, and it feels like you can lock someone down for a very significant amount of damage.
The question is whether Cold will be as active in the early game as perhaps Xin Zhao needs to be to really get the ball rolling. We talked about their possibility of snowballing through bot lane, but even yesterday, Cold wasn't having the impact that his other jungler was, like Maxlaw had in that Misfits game.
I mean, he is across from Xerxes right now, who's been playing a bit of slower paced picks in the likes of the Zac, the Sejuani, and now the Nocturne. So there is a pretty big window, levels 1 through 6, where Xerxes is really going to have his nose down and want to be grinding out levels so he can get to that paranoia and then start using that to make an impact. So hopefully in that window, Cold can get something going for Origen.
Have to keep our eyes on Cold in that early game, because even yesterday, Xerxes on the Karthus had an incredible early game. A jungler that you wouldn't expect to be ganking level 3, level 4. He was there, he was getting the kills, he was getting the assists, he was getting the Dark Harvest stacks, just culling people with his scythe throughout that game.
Just showing his comfort on a pick like the Karthus jungle. Jankos was the guy who made the splash with it, with that disgusting seek and destroy composition that G2 pulled out. But Duke said on the analyst desk that Xerxes is the OG Karthus, 80% win rate with the pick and solo queue. So I liked watching him pick it up, but I really don't like Karthus in games.
I can't blame you for that. I can't blame you for that. We are going to get onto the Summoner's Rift for the fourth game of our day, Splyce versus Origen. A big game for the middle of the pack at the moment. Both these teams trying to prove they deserve to be in that sort of mention of podium contenders, but neither team really haven't shown us enough yet.
Like you said, this could be the difference maker here of who is truly going to be seated at the big kids table, if you will. Whoever wins here, I think, gets to be in the same breath of, Misfits, G2, and then Schalke X.
I think Misfits and G2 maybe a slight breath above.
There was
above.
a full stop in between.
Okay, I can give you that. As long as you've put that defining line in your tier list. It's a very important distinction to make. But let's talk a little bit about how the early game's going to play out. We know Xerxes wants to farm up. If you're Cold, where are you looking for these early ganks? Where are your key points of contestation?
I thought that Cold would start the top side of the map. Now that he's been spotted out, however, he may change it up. Should be noted that it is, again, the Hail of Blades in Zhao. We talked about how much damage early on that can give you. So places down the Trinket Ward. Both junglers have been spotted, and now we're going to play with information, although it will be given away now that Alistar and Ezreal are going to leash for him.
Yeah, giving your jungler that leash just to try and get him a little bit further ahead. That should be fine for Origen. I really want to see Cold start to accelerate the game for Origen, because he's been the player on this team that I thought would have more of an impact than he's had thus far.
And the thing is with Patrick and Mithy kind of pulling back to their jungler, securing, making sure that he's getting the blue buff, it means that they are not the first one into the wave. I really like it when Ezreal's first to the wave because he can get in front of the minions and then start poking and whittling you out with mystic shots. Now that he's late to it, I feel like he's just kind of sacrificed a lot of his pressure in this, and he's just going to get forced in. As you see now, Kai'Sa, Braum, they have the push, they've got the wave, and Patrick's just going to have to chill out for a bit.
Really interesting decision making though, because we saw Patrick and Mithy position up towards the blue buff, didn't actually give Cold any help, and then Alfari on the top side did a ghost leash, so he got a couple of auto attacks down from the red buff, so trying to deny as much awareness as possible from Splyce here.
And again, still that early vision in the river, so they will or should spot out Xerxes here.
Well, maybe he got the fear off.
Oh,
just keeps it out of range. Good stuff from Xerxes to keep the fear away from that bush. Knew it was warded, of course he was standing in it when it was, so still unaware exactly where either of the junglers are if you're looking at the opposing team, and that does give you just that little bit more impetus, that little bit more of a spark in the early game. Norscaran coming for a very early roam up here, has been
Should see
spotted
this
on a
ward
ward.
die. And with that, he should... Oh, he's not going to turn around.
This is really interesting. It's not often that you see a Braum roam at level 2 without his jungler around. Maybe wondering if Cold was coming in for a gank because they weren't quite sure about his positioning, but it feels like he actually gave away quite a lot there and didn't gain much.
And it does mean that Kabi gets some solo EXP. Hold on, some very aggressive trading here.
Alfari just trading straight on to Judgy after dying 1v1 versus Soaz. Alfari wants to put his mark on this game early on.
Yeah, and Alfari having a lot of confidence to do that because Cold is underneath him, creating that safety net. Going to sweep out the jungle. Now they'll have information that Xerxes is on the bottom side of the map, and we'll see how OG respond with that.
Xerxes just very happy to farm up pretty easily in the early game here. It's level 3, we'll be getting towards that level 6 as soon as possible, and that's when we'll start seeing, you know, the Lissandra Urgot combos, maybe even seeing the Kai'Sa coming up for some of those fights. First Dragon is a mountain, so both teams will want that. Gives them just that little bit more clear on the Baron, and of course helps you with those turrets as well. Not too monumental a lead actually taken in any of the lanes thus far for either of these teams, but I think both will be satisfied with a slowish early game.
Feels a little bit slow, but I do want to talk about Patrick on the Ezreal and having the Klepto. The changes to the Klepto is going to help any AD carry who's going to pick up, even Vayne, including in the mid lane. But I feel like what's cool here is that depending on what your matchup is, you can hold yourself in the lane much longer, and instead of backing on tier, you can try to make it to Sheen and turn what could be losing matchups into winning matchups, because then you have the battle stats to trade effectively. And that's what I want to see Patrick do here with the Klepto, and really make that stamp saying, okay, I'm going to hard win this lane, we're going to have the Rise that can follow Lissandra, and we're going to make sure that Cold can do whatever he wants with this map.
So looking for that first back. If he does pick up the Sheen, we'll want to be a little bit more aggressive. Of course, Ezreal into Braum is not an easy matchup for the Ezreal at all. Braum kind of counteracts a lot of his poke with that Unbreakable.
I would say makes it less desirable.
I would agree with that, but Xerxes desires a gank in the mid lane, nuked up Flash Cleanse straight away from Humanoid, and both summoners burn for nothing on the side of Splyce.
But this can be punishing. I like the fact that Nukeduck fakes that he's going to back and then walks back into the lane to pick up the wave.
Bit of an engage in the bottom lane as Mithy goes onto Kobe, lands the stun, but Norscaran puts up the wall, and the counter stun comes onto Mithy. Patrick actually takes a Winter's Bite. He'll get stunned up if Norscaran can get one more auto attack in. Trades back into it, just jumping away from those concussive blows.
Feels like flirting with disaster, but kind of back to Nukeduck quickly. So one of the only members on the team not running a teleport went for the cleanse, so trying to play it very safe and close to the chest in the lane phase. And that's why I liked his initial, you know, I'm going to duck into this bush and then walk back into the mid lane, because he felt he was going to be denied a lot of the CS. Now, ultimately, the TP comes through Humanoid. He does shove the wave in there and denies Nukeduck a bit, but it could have been worse after that initial gank.
It's a really good start for Humanoid, though. Looks like he gets the first placing. 160 gold will go into his back pocket. Already has that Hextech Revolver in his inventory as well, so he's in a very strong position. Nukeduck, double Sapphire Crystal. It's not where you want to be as a Rise. You want to get something stacking up on that first back if you can.
Especially not without your cleanse or your flash. It means that Nukeduck needs to play very close to his tower. He doesn't want this wave to get shoved out, and he's kind of at the mercy of what Splyce want to do in mid.
So again, we see Cold getting up towards that level 5, level 6 mark, and he hasn't really been able to do too much on the map. We wondered if he'd be able to utilize the levels 1 through level 6 before Xerxes hit that paranoia to actually get ganks off. He's not able to yet.
I want to quickly point this out. Try this in solo queue. When you have your first back, try to gank the mid lane from the top side. Most of the time, laners will ward, especially from blue side, on the bottom side of their map. Because Raptors is such a high traffic area, it's more likely that you'll have wards there. You can actually see the ward is on the top side for the red Raptor camp. But by bringing 2 control wards, this is usually cleared, and you can get a free and easy gank, which is what OG are fishing for.
And if as a support you time it at the right time as well, you really don't lose that much out of the bottom lane. It's so easy to come back. You get back into the lane, you lose like a quarter of a level of XP at most.
It's actually something that Invictus Gaming popularized in the LPL. They would always gank mid from the top side and not the bot side. Normally you see bot side ganks.
They did win Worlds last year, so I don't think we can really doubt their methods too much. Patrick pushing the lane in here as Kobe and Norscaven just join back up down towards the bottom side, but really not too much to talk about in this early game. Origen maybe struggling a little bit to get the extra ganks off maybe you want from Cold, but we do now see Patrick with that Sheen and Tier building up, so hope for a bit more aggression in that bottom lane, just trying to put Splyce on the back foot, because we've seen Splyce so often very happy just to scale up into the late game and take those team fights.
Hold on, speaking of team fight.
Alphari trades in, Vanguard's Entercode back, but there's Fear Beyond Death as well. Just needed that final attack to hit. Splyce not quite able to get there. Here comes Xerxes and Humanoid.
Yeah, and that's level 6, so Nocturne could look for the assassination potential, so he's just trying to get vision on Alphari, which is why Chachi is running past the tower.
Get the hell out of there, Chachi. Like, just, you don't want to be anywhere near that if you are Alphari. He died 1v1 yesterday against Soaz in the Misfits game. Doesn't want it to happen again today. Doesn't have the teleport though, so we'll lose out a bit. And Cold says, okay, we know you're jungler and mid laner top side of the map. Let's try and get this dragon for ourselves.
And just very punishing. Remember that this was the priority pick of the Urgot. You know, Origen got to choose their poison. They left the Urgot open. It was the first pick from Splyce, and it's dominating this top phase right now. CS advantage, pressure advantage, and it's bleeding over into the jungle. Origen do manage to trade an objective. They turn it into the Mountain Drake, but again, it doesn't mean much unless you're being proactive on those towers. You know, it's not something like the Infernal or Ocean that just give you free stats.
Oh, I think we have to look down towards that bottom lane for Origen now. We talked about how they wanted to snowball through it. You now have the tools in your toolkit with the Sheen, with this Tier scaling up. You've got a Skirmish Saber already complete on Cold, so he will be looking down towards that bottom side. They cleared out a little bit of vision, but something Splyce have done so well is have just that little bit of an extra ward, just a slightly deeper ward to catch them out. And you can see top side of the map totally in control of Splyce in terms of that red side jungle.
The only gank opportunity that Origen would have down here is if they actually walked in through the back of the lane through the control wards. And the thing is that Kobe and Norscaven are going to play this very safe because they know that Cold's on the bottom side since Rise rotated over to pick up his blue buff. So there's no way that they're going to take aggressive trades right now. They're just here to farm it up to take the free CS, and if Cold is waiting in the wings, to waste his time. But notice that he didn't have the option, it's not there.
So across the board, you can see Splyce just eking out a small amount of gold lead here, Fosk. It's about 700 gold or so. A lot of that has to be on the top lane. You know, Chachi's sitting 13, 14 CS up on average, about 500 gold or so in his back pocket. He's in a very strong position. And if they can translate this into a Rift Herald fight or a first tower, Splyce are in a very good position. Then they look for the split push, the 1-4, the swing that we talked about before. The question is, how do Origen stop it? Because at the moment, they just don't seem to be doing anything on the map.
You either try to match it or you trade elsewhere, which is what Origen have done so far, only 10 minutes into this game. Of course, trading the Mountain Dragon for that pressure to the top side. But right now, I'm actually looking at the Nocturne. You know, there was that big window where the game was going to be played slow from Splyce, allowing the paranoia to come online. Now that it's here, I'm curious where Xerxes is going to use it. Will he go to that top side and kind of double down on the fact that Chachi is so comfortable up into this top side? Or will he try to punish Patrick and Miffy, who are so far forward on this bot lane?
Right, Xerxes was such a key component of this team yesterday on the Karthus, ended 11-1-7 against Rogue. Absolutely dominated the early game here. Couldn't play as aggressively in the early game, but we're only 10 minutes in. There's a lot of opportunities to get those kills.
And it looks like it's going to be throwing everything at the top side. And they don't have to commit on this play. As long as they rotate over and they're not losing any CS in the mid lane, they'll force Alphari and Origen to respond.
I mean, they could just fight man dive him if they really wanted to as well. Who cares about committing? You could force him away. Doesn't have the flash. Alphari not going to be able to escape from this one. Dodges around for as long as possible, but first blood goes to Splyce, and they're going to get the catch onto Cold as well. The jump in. Too easy for Splyce. They don't need to commit, but they want to commit in the top lane.
It's the buy one, get one free, and of course, virtually everyone is running teleport. I loved the macro rotation from Splyce. They set it on the desk. We're going to say it here. This is what they're focusing on as a team, and you can see that it's paying off.
Look at how quickly the game accelerates for them as well. Without even getting this first tower, they're 2,500 gold up. I think the ball bulwark, the extra defenses on that tower will defend it for the moment, but they've got 2 turret platings down in mid. Bot lane tower is still full HP, but they can push that whenever they want now.
And see the immediate ping onto the Rift Herald. So recognizing, take our backs, use the gold advantage that we have. Let's top everything off. Initial itemization across the board complete for them. And now they can start setting up for that Rift Herald and force one of these structures to go down.
Very good stuff all around from Splyce. So coordinated as a team. We said earlier that we wanted to see them just do a little bit more than scale for the late game. That's what they've done here. Bit more proactive, bit more aggressive in the early game. Now, the question for them is, can they stop this Rift Herald from going down?
Yeah, the question is that Origen know that Splyce want it, so they're trying to sneak it out from underneath them. But I don't think they've done it quick enough. Oh, grab and go!
It's only Norscare, and they should just about be able to get it. No eye up after 2,000 HP, just looking for the smite. Here comes Xerxes as well, trying to get into it. The smite comes down, Xerxes gets it, he's stolen it away. And now they're going to steal the life of Mithy as well. He's down. Alfari's teleported in behind though, trying to get onto Xerxes. Vanguard's edge doesn't quite connect. Xerxes comes in with the paranoia. Cold, dead on the top side of the fight. Alfari not able to kill Xerxes. And Splyce will steal your Rift Herald. They'll steal your lives and they will steal the game away.
They absolutely spanked Origen right there and got everything. Norscaren being the one who also walks away with the Rift Herald. A huge swing of powers. Not only the gold lead is growing, but now the map pressure is growing. They can place that Rift Herald mid, top, and take whatever they want.
Just such good stuff all around from the Splyce in that. Yet to lose a kill, yet to lose a tower, and they're about to get first tower of the game as well. Only 12.5 minutes in. This is explosive stuff from Splyce.
And to borrow a word from Upset earlier on in the day, now of course he was talking about Fnatic, but he used the word desperate, and that's what it looked like for Origen right there, that they were desperate. They knew they had a very tiny window to try to take this away from Splyce because they wouldn't be able to fight them on their current items, but Splyce were just too quick to the rotation, and Origen couldn't get out. Hand caught in the cookie jar.
They're just so split up as well. You can see Nukeduck forced up to the top side of the fight. Here, the paranoia perfectly used from Xerxes to stop Alfari being able to get the jump in. And then they just catch him out. The CC chain with the Braum, with the Lissandra, with the Urgot. It's just too darn good. And you can see what Norscaren feels about that. Surprised he's not dabbing already on stage.
He's got a fly pink keyboard. Fly plays right there.
And now Origen looking for Splyce to make mistakes. They don't have the agency to be proactive at the moment. They're too far behind, 4,500 gold. And once again, in the early game, they've fallen behind against a team that scales just as well as them.
Maybe bad traverse.
Oh, Alfari dodges away with a flash. Hits
Mithy
as well. Cold's on his way. There's the teleport. Maybe first kill of the game for Origen if they can lock down Vizichachi for long enough. What's happening on the rest of the map? Not enough for Splyce. Chachi trying to chase onto Alfari. Rift Herald goes down in mid. Flawless Duet will hit Chachi. There's the shutdown, but Rift Herald comes down mid, and this should be the second tower of the game for Splyce. They'll also push in bot lane, so that's turret placings going down as well. Remember, this is just more and more gold going in the back pockets of Splyce. I think they got 12 of those turret placings.
It's going to be the tower platings, it's going to be a second charge on inner mid, and it's also going to be the Mountain Dragon. So still a very strong victory for Splyce in terms of the cross-map play, but it is at least something for Origen. The shutdown bonus, unfortunately, I believe going on Xin Zhao as opposed to one of the carries for Origen.
I mean, you'll take it wherever you can get it, let's be honest. Only 450 extra gold going in the back pocket of Cole, but he's finished his skirmishes. Saber now, almost 15 minutes in. It's about a 5,000, 4,500 gold lead for Splyce. They're going to get their Mountain Drake to equalize Origen's Mountain Drake as well. And now that they've broken that first line of towers, they can just start pushing for the next one.
Triple Mountain. Where are my triple Infernals?
We're not quick shot, okay? It's I mean,
Correction,
Triple Mountain is cool.
You're not quick shot.
Wow. I mean, it's true. It's true. Let's have another look at this fight up towards the top side. Alfari, Chachi thinks he's got him caught out.
So here's the thing. Again, Origen recognized that they don't really want to fight a full 5v5 from Splyce, so they're just trying to find what they can on the map. Call it table scraps, call it whatever you want. They think that they have a pick here, but it just takes so long to kill Chachi that it opens up a bit too much space for Splyce to return and then just take far more. Again, 1 tower, 2 tower, charge into second tower, Mountain Dragon, Rift Herald, all just blew up.
Definitely didn't. At the start of this game, we asked, you know, which of these teams will be that defining line? Which of these teams is looking for playoffs and for a podium position? And which of these teams will be fighting for 5th or 6th at the end of the split? At the moment, Splyce seem to be decisively challenging for that podium.
Looking very clean so far in this game. I'm just curious if Origen are going to be able to clear out their jungle safely and then just start slowing down this game, get more power into Ezreal's hands, and then hopefully try to maybe scale out of this.
So where's the point where you have enough power in Ezreal's hands? He's going Iceborne Gauntlet build. Do you need Iceborne and Seraphs complete for him to be truly online?
I mean, he's definitely going to have to go for probably a double tier build if he wants to maintain any late game damage scaling with Kai'Sa. But everything is snowballing so quickly out of control.
Holy moly, this dive shot to Nuke. Glacial Fish comes down as well. Mithy stunned up in that front line, tries to get the knockup, but already caught out by Splyce. That's one down. Patrick flashed away. Here comes Chachi from the side, not able to get enough damage down onto the Origin members, but another tower falls in favor of Splyce.
Splyce are just so far ahead of the clock because they've taken down so many of these structures early on in the game. 4 towers at 16 minutes before Barons even spawned.
It's so good from Splyce thus far. You can see how far he was just trying to split. They knew he didn't have the teleport. They knew he was just going down towards that bottom lane. So Splyce were able to force plays on the other side of the map.
Yeah, just trying to pick up anything that he can at this point. Because again, OG, they just want to stabilize the map and kind of stop the bleeding right now. But Splyce, you know, where they were hesitant on forcing fights, on pulling the trigger, that's completely disappeared today. Much more decisive. The fact that it's Humanoid who is very quickly just clawing past the tower and saying, you cannot stand here, we will just kill you.
It's just CC after CC after CC. You give some credit to Origin. They managed to get basically everyone out but Mithy, who sacrifices himself for it. They almost kill Humanoid, not quite able to get that final attack down. But what I love from Splyce here is just how proactive they're being. You talked about it. Like, they are going on the front foot over and over again. And yesterday we said Humanoid just needs to be a little bit more aggressive. He needs to just take that one more step forward, and he's showing us that he can do that today.
And I had some questions, you know, maybe you don't want to give the responsibility to start fights in the support and the mid laner, even though those champions are so powerful in the meta at doing that, simply because they are kind of the newer or younger members here. But Humanoid, completely different appearance this time around, and Lissandra looks much more comfortable this game.
Definitely does. Origin are looking weak, waiting for that scaling. Patrick needs 3 items. Nuke Duck the same, really. We talked about how he's kind of a traditional answer to the Lissandra because you can roam around and you can make those picks in side lanes. Not really able to do that when you're sitting on 1.5 items at the 18-minute mark.
It's getting a bit better, though. They do have decent wave clear and a lot of safety because it's the Ezreal as well as now completing the Iceborne Gauntlet, so he's got a little bit of AoE, but Splyce are just not stopping the pressure, and they're attacking the entire map, not just a single lane.
You can see the 1-4 starting to be established. Humanoid in that mid lane, the rest of Splyce down towards this bottom side. Chachi switched away from the teleport, has heal from his unsealed spellbook, and Origin will force them back, but that little chip damage is all you need as Splyce. You just continually chip away until in 1.5 minutes time you can force towards the Baron.
And again, it's the I prepared this earlier while they pulled Origin to the bottom side and were sieging on that bot side tower. Humanoid just walked up the mid lane with the creep wave, and they get the tower for free anyway.
And that demolish on the Lissandra doing wonders as well. Of course, the Aftershock room, the keystone that you take on Lissandra now, gives you that tankiness as you dive in.
Yeah, it's a big thing. You know, AP carries, they actually hit the tower so hard, especially when they're speccing into the Resolve tree because of that demolish rune. You see like an AP Galio rock up to a tower, he basically 4-shots it.
It's incredibly strong. Now, next steps you have to think for Splyce. Control the enemy jungle, get that triangle of vision over towards the Origin red buff, and then go towards the Baron.
I mean, that's usually the maneuver, and we'll see if Splyce actually follow through on it, but I don't think they need the Baron to force this game. In fact, if OG want to take advantage anywhere, they're basically like, look for a Baron steal. Just start throwing Ezreal poke as Splyce would circle in on this Baron. I think that they're strong enough that you actually just continue to siege the tower and only go towards the Baron if you're trying to force a fight, because the 50-50 steal, that's the only way that Origin get a foot back in this game.
I mean, it's a lot easier to siege inhibitor towers now as well, of course, because after the 15-minute mark, you get a cannon minion every other wave. At the 25-minute mark, you get one every wave. It means all you need is to step up with that one auto attack, get the demolish off, and you're just chipping away at that tower.
And as long as you have proper flanking vision, you know, making sure that you've warded out your side so no one can get behind you or get to the side of you, it's very strong in Splyce's composition. You know, they have a Braum that can walk up to a tower, he can deny a lot of that Ezreal damage, and you can just try to make space for Lissandra to threaten people off the structure by throwing Claw repeatedly.
If you're Origin right now, you're probably licking your wounds a little bit from a weak early game once again, but you need to work out a plan. You have to have a strategy. Yes, you want to delay, but how much can you give up before you've given up too much in this game? Origin will delay as much as possible, but if you lose an inhib tower, is that too much? They're going for a fight here as the teleport comes in. Splyce just trying to get the engage. You can see Patrick jumps across the wall, lots of damage down onto Cole. There's the Vanguard's edge as well. Alfari, great force to right from him. Chachi's low. Splyce were the ones to force the engage. Origin come out on top for the moment. Splyce may be looking for a re-engage. You still got Killer Instinct, and you still have the Lissandra ultimate.
Very messy fight from Splyce, not necessarily on the same page. They saw the TP coming down from Humanoid, but I feel like Urgot just went in a bit too early, shredded too much of his health, and he basically couldn't tank anymore, so they didn't want to start the fight once Lissandra had finally shown up. So that may actually be the breathing room that Origen need, as they now have control over the mid lane, they're moving into the Baron, and they're just trying to clear out this vision here. They want control of the Scuttle Crab, they want to place down some wards, and then they want to go back to farming or looking for picks.
Maybe just trying to set up around the Baron here, because they know the Urgot's down towards the bottom side, has switched to the teleport on Chachi. For the moment, they're happy the game has been delayed. Origen will take that. They are still 7,000 gold behind, though, and this is a position we have seen them in too often for their fans. Saw it against Misfits yesterday, saw it against G2, now we're seeing it against Splyce, a team that they would have thought they could beat.
And Splyce now, as you were talking about, have pushed up the mid lane. They've got multiple wards up there, so they can see very deep down into Origen's base when they would start to rotate towards the Baron pit, and are actually doing a really good job trying to contest this triangle vision. They just need to push this vision line a little bit farther, kind of in the area where Cold is, and they can start setting up traps with the Lissandra and the Nocturne.
That seems to be exactly what they are doing right now. Push through the mid, bring Humanoid and Chachi up towards this Baron as well. That Scuttle Crab still there, of course, from when Origen took it, but Splyce can just start it up straight away. There we are, Chachi will be spotted.
I love this because Humanoid can catch whoever comes to check, and then Xerxes can very quickly zip over the wall if he doesn't want to just sit and burn on the Baron.
Baron down to 800 already, taken out. Humanoid still on that flank position. There's the Fear Beyond Death, the chasing with the Paranoia. Mickey is the target, just looking for the CC chain, hits Humanoid, jumps in. They just want the Alistair. Easy pickings here for Splyce. They take one, and now Origen are on full retreat. They sound the alarm bells. They need to get out the Crescent Guard. It will not guard you for long enough. Origen lose 2 and Splyce come out huge.
And that is Splyce being on the same page, and not only with that, but also with their map. They have the mid wave pushing in as well as the top wave. They can pick and choose where they are going to pick apart Origen's base, and it's going to be both lanes, it feels.
Yeah, go for the 1-4 if you need it, or just put all your 5 players up towards the top side. Open up this top inhibitor, then you can look towards mid afterwards. That tower already chunked out, taken out. Splyce maybe a little bit on the back foot here, because Nukeduck's gonna open up on him. Patrick's still very healthy as well, has a lot of mana, that's all you need. Chachi down, North Scaven will follow as well. Origen punch Splyce back in the top lane.
They managed to take down a couple of the Baron buffs, but meanwhile, Xerxes took down the inhib tower in the mid lane. So still a big map win for Splyce, as they're going to reset, spend all of this gold, and then just try to run it down Origen's throat.
So the big thing about this is Humanoid has this flank position here. You can see the danger zone for Origen is always going to be here. Humanoid, all he has to do is come in from the side here. He can lock Alfari and Patrick out. Mithy's already caught out, and it forces all of Origen back across here. You can see they just keep having to pull down as Humanoid pushes forward into the fight. Great stuff from Splyce with a superb flanking position.
And I love watching how different players are utilizing the Lissandra and the danger threat around the Baron, because there's so many walls that you can hide the Glacial Path through. Like you're talking about, it creates these massive danger zones for teams.
Great stuff from Splyce. Of course, good hit back from Origen in the top lane. Splyce maybe just a little bit too greedy. Could have reset before going for that push, because they have a perfect 1-4. They could have taken a breather, taken a step and said, okay, we've got a 10,000 gold lead. Let's just reset and then go for a 2-3 lane push with this Baron.
At this point, I feel like Origen are going to 5-man stack and then just try to set up a Fnatic Death Brush if they can. Catch anyone unsuspecting, but right now, Splyce, gone are the days of kind of that slow, scaling indecisiveness. They are very decisive, they are willing to pull the trigger, they recognize when they're strong, and they know what their win conditions are.
Exactly the change we wanted to see from Splyce. We wondered if they were just that 40-minute death ball of a composition. They are not. Now Origen have to try and find an answer, have to try and pull a rabbit out of the hat. Here's Nukeduck looking for the catch on Kobbe, gets the root as Kobbe has to flash the wall. A little bit of a misposition there from the Splyce franchise man, the only player that has been with them through all of their time in the European Premier Leagues.
Still giving respect, we do have some decent damage coming out of Ezreal and Ryze if they land their abilities.
As we said, you know, you get that Ryze to 2-3 items, you can do a lot of work. Alfari unable to land the stun now. We'll see Splyce push up towards that top side. There's the Glacial Fish. Vanguard's edge comes out as well. Alfari looking for an avenue into the fight. He jumps onto Xerxes. Good flash away from Xerxes. Keeps himself safe for the moment. And Splyce will just reset. They can do that. Mithy is going to go in. Lands the knocker, but it's not enough to catch out Humanoid.
And at this point, Origen's composition has stalled out long enough that they've got their core itemization. They are starting to get quite scary in these team fights. Again, big burst damage coming from the Ryze and the Ezreal. And so I like the fact that Splyce, again, using this swing nature of their composition, their high mobility between the likes of the Nocturne, the Kai'Sa, and Lissandra, and to attack multiple lanes at once. It does mean, however, that they need to keep their vision line up. The Observer just actually sweeped over it. Keep your flanking wards down to create these long runways so you can very safely swing to your opponents.
And you want to keep Origen guessing where you are in that jungle as well. Are you going mid? Are you going top? All you have to do is rotate round, join your team, sets you up perfectly for success. Third dragon of the game will go over to Splyce. Only fourth dragon of the game, third dragon for Splyce. Only 26 minutes in. We are seeing a lot more dragons now that respawn time has been reduced just a little bit.
Makes the games feel like they're going a bit faster.
Yeah,
Makes
it
that
does.
Elder a bit more impactful.
It's always fun to see a lot of dragons go down. Double Mountain Ocean is a pretty good spot to be in. Of course, Ocean not the dragon you want at the 26-minute mark, but you'll still take it, especially if the game continues to stall out and you have resets after team fights.
This is some of my favorite League of Legends to watch because it is quite difficult to execute on. How you're playing with your wave control, your fog of war, and your vision line to make sure that everyone's on the same page. And the fact that Splyce is still a very, young roster, you're expecting there to be some teething problems in terms of synergy, are able to execute this against Origen is actually really impressive. If one person is out of position, it's very easy to find a pick and then immediately turn a 4v5 advantage.
We always talked about Splyce's coaching staff, Duke, Peter Dunn, such a powerful array of knowledge that they have for backing them, and you can always see it come out at this sort of point in the game. They know exactly what they want to do.
But at some point, they're going to have to fight Origen because they're going to have to go through them to get to the Nexus. So this is Splyce probably either waiting around for the Baron, maybe try to have the super minions and the Baron creeps on their side when they do it, and Origen just going to plant their feet, 300 style. This is where we fight them. Eventually, you will have to group. Our composition is actually very scary at this point in the game.
It's the gates of Thermopylae just holding them back as much as possible. But the question is, can Origen do it? Because they're 11,000 gold behind. And at some point, your ball of numbers just becomes a lot stronger than the other team's ball of numbers.
And at some point, there is just a breaking point where the gold difference doesn't really mean that much because it's gold to a point where you get your core items. And again, you can see this from Splyce. When they approach, unless they get the perfect team fight where they're fighting in the jungle, they have the vision control, they get the Lissandra on top of everyone, they don't really want to approach Origen because they'll eat so much poke damage from the Ezreal just trying to get up there.
With only 17 seconds on the Baron, let's have a quick look at how Splyce have set up the vision. Now they're going to step forward, they clear out this control ward. There's a couple of wards around as well. It's a very short-range teleport from Patrick, just wants to get there a little bit quicker. He will join up with his team. Now you see basically no vision for Origen. They have this one strong ward at the back of the pit, but in terms of in the river, they only have one ward up towards the top lane. Just enough for a good flanking position, but not for the engage already. All of it goes onto NukeDuck. He gets away with the realm war, but Kobe jumps straight onto him. NukeDuck down, and now Splyce just going to open up on Origen. How far are you trying to get the stuns off? Can't quite get enough damage down. It's up to Patrick. It's all on him and Cold and Myth. He's trying to defend, but Chachi's still full HP, and Kobe pushing forward as well.
And they pull the trigger on the engage. The decisiveness is there. I believe with the Lissandra that started everything up. And Patrick is dealing a lot of damage, so maybe force Splyce out of the base, but very easy to back up and rotate towards Baron.
Can you do a Baron against Patrick poking you across?
Well, because he doesn't have his TP since he used it initially to get in, and they don't have vision control, it looks like Origen are actually just going to give it up. But I think it's very smart from Splyce to recognize, okay, the Ezreal cannot contest us. The Ezreal ultimate is down. We have complete vision control. Let's just take the safer play.
Love to see how that play started as well, because it feels like NukeDuck just got caught out by Xerxes. Kobe with the willingness to jump all the way for that 1v1 at the end as well.
Take another look at how this fight actually started. I do like Chachi using the vision to make sure that he can get the flank and get the Ezreal in position, but it really was Humanoid. Again, flying forward on Lissandra, finds the start onto Cold.
The thing about that as well is Humanoid isn't only finding the engage onto Cold, he's also forcing NukeDuck to position down in the lane, which is why they're able to catch him out totally isolated from the rest of his team.
And the only saving grace from Origen that you saw there was just how much damage the Ezreal ult is doing at this point in the game. The changes to Ezreal's W and his ultimate just make him, I think, god tier status in terms of ADCs. He's not a huge priority pick comparatively to like the Cassio or the Lucian, but I feel like every AD carry, especially with all the upgrades that the LEC bot lanes have gone through this split, would feel perfectly fine grabbing an Ezreal.
Origen once again just found wanting in that last team fight. They have a huge amount of damage on Patrick. Went the Blade of the Ruin King instead of the Saras. Now has that second tier scaling up. You are at 2.5 items on NukeDuck as well, so that Machine Gun Rise can do a lot of work in team fights. But the question is, is it too little too late? Because you have a almost full build Kobe, Infinity Edge, Ginsu, Storm Rains, a rapid fire cannon. You've got 3.5 items on Humanoid, who is playing these team fights almost to perfection, and you only have one inhibitor tower left if you're Origin. Against a Baron buff with those double cannons pushing in, this is going to be very hard work.
Which is, again, why Splyce are making sure that they're sieging all 3 lanes at the same time, applying the Baron buff across the map and trying to split up Origin's wave clear and a lot of their damage, letting the minion changes and the Baron buff do the work for them.
Mithy maybe looking for a position here. There's the Paranoia. They're just diving straight on towards one. There's the Fear Beyond Death. That's a very dead Patrick. And the rest of Origin is soon to follow. Splyce is cleaning up house in the base of Origin. They will not wait for a second longer. 4 down. Only Mithy survives. He's running back to the fountain, but his Nexus is not going to survive for much longer. What a great game from Splyce, and they stake their claim in the top 4 with a great win over Origin.
It's not the games done quick that we've seen all day, but it is the games done clean. A very methodical victory as Splyce just pick Origin apart across the map.
Great stuff all around from Splyce. I mean, it's relatively quick for them. 31 minutes is a speedy game if you're a Splyce fan. You see, 35, 40 minutes or so. And across the board, they look clean there. That was methodical, macro, good laning, mechanical. I could put all the buzzwords in a hat and you could pick one out and that would describe Splyce.
And you see the smiles on their face. The coaching staff probably feeling pretty good about that one. There wasn't any big egregious errors. Everyone had their strong individual mechanical performances and then also had the strategic edge on top of that. So just impressive from Splyce.
I think Origin would be pretty dismayed with that game as well. We talked about how much pressure there was on them, how the weight of expectation maybe was getting to them. There were a few nervous plays in that game as well, and I do wonder, is this Origin going to come back fighting, or is this sort of the start of a downward trend for them?
You'd want to assume that with the veteran players on Origin that they're going to be fine, they're going to be able to shake this off. It's a long split. That said, it felt like the breaking point really was the creative play from Splyce to just send all of their members topside, that TP from Kabi coming out as they dove the topside tower and just, making good on the fact. Priority pick for Chachi on that Urgot, blitzed the top lane, and they just followed through on it.
At the moment, it just feels like Origin is picking champions they're comfortable on, but not champions they will make a big statement on. It feels that they are reverting to norm and haven't really, as a team, truly found their identity yet.
I think it comes back to execution because, watching what Origin are doing and how they're thinking about the map, I agree with their moves, I can see what they're thinking, and it's just these slight execution differences between victory and defeat. That's
a good thing we're only in week 2, though. They have a lot of time to develop. We've seen teams win the league only having 4 losses at the end of it, and Origin only have 3. At the moment, so they got 1 loss in the bank. They can lose another game throughout the tournament.
Unfortunately, this week is going to probably sting pretty significantly. Yeah. You don't want to lose 2 games due to execution problems and not even get to follow through on your game plan. It just never feels good in the coaching room.
And especially since it's a lot coming down to their early game, how they are getting knocked around in the early game by some inventive plays from Splyce. Have to give them a lot of credit. Even when we saw them setting up for that top lane play, we're like, they don't need to commit. They just want to force him back over the tower. No, double TP, we're jumping in, we're diving in, we're popping the ult. And because of it, they got 2 kills, they got first tower blood, and the game just snowballed for them from there.
Very quickly identifying that Origin weren't in position and again, pulling the trigger. And that's what I want to see from Splyce. I want speed, I want proactivity, I want decisiveness. That's what we got.
Exactly. Great stuff from Splyce all round. I do wonder where exactly I would put them in my power rankings as we come to the end of week 2. I think it would go Misfits G2, Schalke Splyce. I think Splyce would be 4th for me.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that feels pretty safe. And it feels like Origin are unfortunately tumbling farther and farther down the rankings. The initial victory over Fnatic maybe takes a lot of the wind out of their sails now that we get a bigger picture and more tape on kind of the state that Fnatic's currently in.
Well, that's it from us for now. Dear me, I messed up that. Anyway, that's it from us for here, for now. We're going to hand it over to Shox in the analyst desk.
Thank you very much, Medic. Inspiring game by Splyce, I should say. When we looked at this game, we thought, well, this is going to be a bit more decisive in terms of telling us who deserves to be in the top 4 or who can aim for the top 4 between OG and Splyce. And the answer is also decisive. It is Splyce, unfortunately, for OG.
I mean, it was just so clear.
Yeah.
From the second we saw that first tower dive in the top lane, how coordinated Splyce were, how comfortable they were playing together as a team. We saw it from the top lane duel yesterday. We're going to see it again now from the entire lineup. No hesitation to go right over that wall to get into this play. Alfari, he tries his best with his Aurelia, but it just honestly does not work out. He's just caught between a rock and a hard place, and Origen really never got back on their feet.
No, this was at the 10-minute mark, so you could say, well, hey, they waited a bit, but I think I see this more as, yes, they waited until the opportune time to make this move, and what was more telling to me is that after that, Splyce did not slow down, because the kills kept coming for them.
The kills absolutely did, and the mechanical outplay is coming in as well. Alfari trying to get something done on this Aurelia. This is one of my favorite replays from a Nocturne, if I'm remembering the right one. There are a lot of fights around this pit area, but just across the board, comes in, takes this away. Look at the bloodlust in the eyes of Alfari. This man sees a kill. He is hungry. He wants to get something done. Barely misses, tries to throw down the flawless duet, the perfect dodge from the Nocturne, the entire team of Splyce collapsing in an instant. That is coordination to a T. That is what you love to see from this Splyce lineup. It was fantastic.
What is interesting to me is that yesterday we were talking to Juke, and we said, hey, you're still playing slow like you used to do with Kabi cleaning up in the late game team fights. Is this an active choice? Do you think this is a bad thing? He said, well, no, not really. We are working towards if it can go faster, it can. And I love that we saw that today. They knocked off 8 minutes of how fast they usually, or how slow they usually finish games. And a lot of that for me has to do with that Vizicsacsi-Xerxes duo being reunited. These guys used to play together on the Unicorns of Love. We know that Xerxes had a relatively good year last year. We know that Vizicsacsi can reach high highs, but it seems like this Rubik's Cube for Splyce is working out because these two are back together.
And I feel like both of these players have always had an X factor. We've seen these incredible games from Vizicsacsi, these game-defining moments, and you've seen these incredible games from Xerxes. And then they kind of remain hidden for long parts of the season.
Yes.
You know, Xerxes go down into a slump, but right now they're both playing at their peak, and when they play at their peak, they look absolutely unstoppable. Yesterday was the Karthus for Xerxes, today was the Nocturne. He was enabling the team across the board, and when he's on, he's just so good.
Yeah, I love it because, of course, we've had a bunch of seasons already here in EU. Now in the LEC, this is the configuration of Splyce in 2019, and this seems to be a combination that really works. Put Kabi with a Norscairn, who had a breakout year last year and is looking to go and is pretty aggressive. Humanoid, that new, hungry mid laner, and Xerxes and Vizicsacsi making the moves like they once did together, and boom, you seem to have a recipe for a top 4 team.
You absolutely do, and there's just so many active playmakers on the map. You talk about Splyce speeding up. We heard from Duke, we heard from everyone that it was little mistakes that were slowing them down. We did not see those little mistakes today. They played so incredibly clean, and now you know, as a team that has to play against Splyce, if they get a lead over you, they will not hesitate to close it out as quickly as possible.
Yeah, beautiful game from them. One closing note maybe before we go to the interview about OG. We're wondering where they can end up, where they can aim. For now, it is not looking so good this week. What do they need to look for going into next one?
Honestly, I think they need to find their identity. Yesterday, they had a very clear team-focused strategy, and individuals fell through. Today, they drafted for individual lanes to get their individual players comfortable. Once again, individuals fell through. So to me, I just want to see them figure out how to set their players up for success and to find a consistent strategy they can execute rather than jumping around and draft and trying to play so many different things.
Yeah, not too good from them today, but as said, Splyce walking away with the victory rather, and Quickshot is standing by for an interview with their mid laner and AD carry.
Thank you very much. Yes, congratulations on the win. I'm joined by Humanoid as well as Kabi. Definitely a convincing win. We heard the analysts talking a little bit about it. When Splyce tends to win games, maybe Kabi, you can attest this a little more than most. It's a little slower than some teams. It's been something that the Splyce organization has been synonymous with. So talk to us a little bit about that and maybe how you feel as the only remaining player on the roster.
Well, I definitely think in the past, and especially last year, most of our games were really slow. But I think now we have a much better idea already on how to play the game, and we don't want to be this boring team who just does nothing the whole game and just waits to outscale. So I don't really... It's the Splyce meme, only late game, but that's not really the way we want to go.
I think you won, what was it, 32 minutes long, and you talked about some proactive plays. Humanoid, one of the explosive mids, one of the next guys everyone's looking at going, is this the next EU mid man? How does it feel to play on stage, and congratulations on the win? It's the first time I've got to chat to you.
It feels definitely really good. I think that the mid lane competition in here is pretty strong, and all the rookies are looking really good right now. So, yeah. I think all the mates are pretty good in EU right now.
It is very exciting, and if you were to consider where your skill limit is going to match up or equal up, you know, where would you rank yourself as far as the EU mids? There's a lot of excitement from the fans for the next game.
Well, I didn't play against Caps so far, but I think I can compete pretty well against all the others, and we'll have to see against G2.
I really am happy you mentioned that, because just before we were getting ready for the interview, I was saying to Kabi and Humanoid that after today's games, we're getting a clear top 5. G2 and Misfits are currently sort of top of the table, and then we've got the likes of Schalke, Vitality and Splyce. Now, as far as the wins go, Splyce has taken down XL and Rogue. Now Origen. Origen was one of the first sort of, top teams. Next week, Cobby, you guys are playing Schalke and G2. How are those games going to go to you?
Well, obviously next week looks really hard on paper. But I think with what we showed today, if we can bring the same, then we should at least be able to go 1-1. Like, I think we'll have a really good shot there.
All right, nicely done. I also believe, Cobby, your family's in the venue today. How does it feel winning in front of them, picking up a 2-0 week with your family here in Berlin?
It feels really good. I woke up today and I felt really good about this match and had to put on a better performance if my family came all the way to Berlin. So.
Well, congratulations for that one. I just 1 or 2 more quick questions. Humanoid, you specifically mentioned Caps. You are playing him next Saturday, 7 days from now. How will you clap Caps?
Well, it's hard to say. I think he's obviously the best mate in EU, so it's going to be really hard. But I hope I can prepare well for him and show that I can beat him.
Well, one thing I would also like to say is, Humanoid, you are the Kia player of the game, winning with about 45% of the vote. 41%, thank you, production, for the correction. How does it make you feel knowing that the fans at home have recognized your performance and awarded you the player of the game?
Well, being the player of the game, I think feels really good every time. I hope I'm going to keep getting it more, but so far it's the first time, so it feels really good.
Congratulations, I really like seeing that one. I'm just going to ask you one very quick fire question before we go to the ad break. Coming up next is our match of the week. It is Misfits versus Vitality. Humanoid, who will win, Misfits or Vitality?
I would say Misfits.
Cobby?
I think Misfits too.
Well, there we go. Here you have it from the 2-0 Splyce. We're going to head to break, and when we come back, Misfits take on Vitality. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you. Awesome.